What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Chris Ross. Chris has led corporations to award-winning and high-performance sales teams, as well as pioneered profitable business development programs for his own companies that are nationally accredited. He specializes in training international business executives, companies, and corporations on methods, techniques he has developed over the years on adopting both sides of the buyer-seller relationships. Chris is also currently contracted by 61 companies and corporations over the world, where he aligns his sales process that is producing massive results and radical transformation. But that's not the only reason I wanted to have this conversation with Chris. Chris is somebody who's gone through his own transformation over the years, and he's truly now become a thought leader out of the sheer will and desire to want to help people level up in their life. You see, Chris could have rested on his laurels and stuck with his multiple 8 to 9 figure businesses that he's currently running. But he wanted to step out in front of the camera and really begin to share his knowledge with the people who need to hear it. You guys are going to love this conversation. You're going to see that Chris and mine's thought process is aligned so wholeheartedly. If you listen to my podcast for a long time, you know I often talk about the power of 1% and growing 1% every single day. Chris feels the same, so we do a deep dive on that. This one has been a lot of fun, and you guys are going to love it. Now, without further ado, let's get to this episode with Chris Ross. Chris, welcome to the show, man.
What's up? I'm so excited to be here, man. It's been a long time coming, bro. Long time coming, but yeah, I'm really excited to be here and serving your audience.
It was what Brian Bogert connected us, and I think, or Anthony Trucks, or it's all intermingled.
We're all connected. Yeah, we're all connected. It depends on, I guess, by the time when you meet them or I meet them, or it's funny how we're all aligned and we're all connected in some type of form or fashion, for sure.
Yeah, dude, I love it too, because whenever those guys say, "Hey, talk to this person," I go, "Yes." Mm-hmm. And then once we connected, I was like, "Okay, here's why." Right? Like it was one of those. I think we were 15 minutes into our call a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Dude, you got to come on my show. We got to have this conversation. People need to hear it. Your story's inspiring. Where you're at now is incredible." But why don't we get into who's Chris today, and then we'll untap how you got there.
Great question to start off. I love coming on shows and they hit me with a question that I typically don't get a chance to answer. So I'm excited to answer this one. Who am I today is a person that made a decision a long time ago that all the things that have happened to me in life were there for me to make a different decision and a choice and a different habit and a different behavior to manifest the life that I have now. I love when people say, you need to find yourself. You don't need to find yourself. You need to create yourself. And you create yourself from everything you do already have inside of you right now to be successful. A lot of times when people come and ask me and say, "Chris, what does it take to get to a 7 or an 8-figure type of level?" You need to become that 7 and 8 different version of yourself. It takes a different version. You can't be the same cat you were 6 months ago or a year ago or 18 years. You can't be the same person.
Right.
You need to constantly be evolving. My dedication to become 1% better each and every day. It's been my saving grace in life, Justin. 8 years ago, I made that decision. Listen, I figured out why I need to shed these layers. I need to get to my true, authentic self. And when you start polarizing and putting that out, you're only going to attract the right people and only attract the right opportunities. You just got to pay attention to the small signs and taking that next step.
Yeah, dude. And I love the fact that you bring up the 1% every single day, because that's something I've also been saying for years. And by the way, we have not met each other until a couple of weeks ago.
Right,
we were both saying this similar thing. And that was the change for me too, right? We can have these massive goals in life. You're very successful financially. You've worked with some of the biggest organizations in the world. You've done all these things. But if you're not focused on that small amount of growth, there's no satisfaction in life, right? The end game isn't the win, right? It's the journey.
It's the process,
let's talk a little bit about that. 8 years ago, when you're like, okay, I figured out my why. Now I'm going to focus on this 1%. What was that shift in your life? What happened in that moment?
I think it was when I was a regional director and I was working with, a major trade school, and we weren't just doing like good numbers. We were doing crazy numbers in enrollments. And when you're working with trade schools, and just for the listeners that don't understand about this, the trade schools, they keep their accreditations. That's kind of like a white label or a seal of approval from the government, and for them to do FAFSAs and keeping their accreditations. Well, that means you have to enroll people into a program, product, service, good, whatever, right? They go through the program, do well, pass and review, then get placed into a job. Well, if they're not over 90% of the people they enroll into that program that pass and reviews and get placed in a job, you'll lose your accreditation. Right. So when I kind of cut I guess you're like honing in on my craft, and I was in education sales for a long time, and it takes a very special individual to dissect and to really look deep inside of someone's skills, attributes, what they want out of life, goals, and their needs, wants, desires, whatever that might be, and really qualify them. A lot of salespeople nowadays, they don't qualify. They just assume, and they keep moving in product and service push. That's not the way it works. So to answer your question, about 8 years ago, I started rubbing elbows with people that were investors for these colleges and trade schools. And I'm speaking on stage. I was one of the top recruiters in the nation, which was a huge accomplishment for myself, because never thought that I would ever make it that type of level. But then I realized that I was only making an X amount of dollars, and I'm making them millions of dollars every month. Millions. I was like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that I'm only making this and investing 80 hours of my life a week, and for you to sit at home and just reap the benefits and just shine a light on me and tell me how great I am? Yeah. Well, then I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my talent somewhere else. And luckily for myself, I'm like, just like with the whole frequency thing, right? And I was meeting good people, meeting the right people. That's the most important thing. Paying attention to the small signs, pointing me in the right directions for maybe some international companies that were looking for people like myself that had a certain skill set of taking them from an online company to a online education company, which a lot of this in this kind of world. They'll sell you a product and service of good. We got to pay very close attention to those types of people trying to sell products and services of goods. If they've only made all their money from that one product and service of good, don't buy that shit. Okay? Because it's all a lie. It's all a scam. We're in a society right now where anyone can call themselves anything they want to call them. Like, everyone's a best-selling author. Come on, man. Like, relax. So to answer your question a little bit, go deeper into this. 8 years ago, I said, man, I'm done with this. I know I'm one of the best in the game of doing it at a high level. I'm about to go prove it. So I was a big fish in a little pond. And when I jumped to that big pond, that's where I had to prove it. So, and ever since then, in order for me to hit that levels and hitting those numbers that I wanted to hit, it needed that 1% every day and falling in love with the process. That's what it's going to take, because it's every day I shed a different layer. And if I'm moving that needle, and some days are, worse than others, man. It doesn't mean that I'm walking here and it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. Entrepreneurship is difficult. And as you know, it's difficult, man. Some days I'm going to punch right in the face. I'm like, well, I man up today. They must not know me. I got a bigger heart, right? Yeah. It's all about heart.
No, you said so much there that I want to unpack. First, I want to go back to, like you said, you were an employee working your way up the rank. You're crushing it. And you're like, I'm slaving away for a paycheck versus the potential to make millions. A lot of people get themselves there in their life, and then they go, okay, now I just want to pivot to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to become whatever. They don't stay in their niche. They don't stay in their strength. And so let's talk to that a little bit. Like, what was it about staying in that market that you're like, was it the no-brainer of like, this is how I'm going to make money? Or was it something you were passionate about? Because I think too many people pivot too hard when they get out, and then they find themselves broke and 6 months later back in a job.
Right. It's a good point. And a lot of people miss that. They need to be a CEO. They need to have their business cards and their websites and all the other stuff. They need to see all that stuff and just to be validated. Well, I made a decision. I was like, okay, I saw a gap in the marketplace, a huge gap. And this is 8 years ago. So you're thinking about like online marketing and all that. That's the boom, right? When it really took off. There's a huge gap because when they would get on the phone and they would request a product or service or good, whatever, their sales team would get on the phone, and they were entrepreneurs themselves, and they would get on the phone to try to sell our own product or service or MLM, whatever that might be. And I was like, you guys are doing it wrong. Positioning, one. Two, like, why would someone listen to you and you're supposed to be a 7-figure earner or a high six-figure earner? Why are you getting on a phone call the first time? You're losing cool points. That's positioning. If someone told me that they were a 7-figure earner and I'm requested a product or service from your company and you got on the phone with me, you lost all credibility with me. So it's like positioning, the way that you conduct yourself. Like, I don't need to, and there's something that I think Anthony Trucks mentioned to me one time. I think it was. He was talking about he went to somewhere and he was wearing what he was wearing, right? T-shirt and shorts. And as soon as he opened his mouth, people were like, who are you? You don't need, that's the whole point. I don't need to tell people who I am. I don't need to tell people who I'm about and what I do. When I see a huge gap in the marketplace, they're doing it by what I'm not saying and how I'm conducting myself. So when that huge gap, and I saw that gap in the marketplace, it was people coming after me going, Chris, I need your services. Then I was like, well, if I take a consulting gig on the side, and I just built it from there. So next thing I got an assistant. I got this assistant. I got this assistant. I was the assistant before the assistants, and I was like, you know what I mean? So it built from there. I just grew my team, and now 300 something employees, and all the organizations that I own. I mean, I'm very blessed and I'm very fortunate individual because it always doesn't end up this way, right?
Right.
But then again, if I lost it all today, Justin, I'm prepared to do whatever I got to do to manifest a life again, because it's not about the skills. Yeah, and it does help, the talent. But to develop the skill, you need to first be aligned and actually go and dig deep inside of yourself and figure out, okay, what am I good at? What can I do to raise the bar? Because everyone's good at something. But how can you become the best? It's really easy right now to become the top 1% in your industry. Really easy. Do you know why? There's 99% of the world, they're going to fold when a little bit of adversity hits them in the face. They're going to fold. A little bit of adversity. We have a society right now, it's just paper thin.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just a generation. Could be, I don't know, there's a lot of options nowadays. But I'm not going to get on a phone or I'm not going to walk into a company. I'm not going to get up in my day and be reactive. I'm going to be proactive.
I love that. And so, it's funny listening to you say that. It's one of those things where there are a lot of people who fold, and it is because of the generation we live in of like everything's at our fingertips. You want something, you press a button, you got it, right? And that just doesn't work in entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of people out there, when you're talking about going back to the first thing you were saying about there's a lot of fake people out there. There's a lot of people who bought a certificate and said, here it is, because people are selling you that bullshit. They're selling you this idea that you can buy this certificate and now you're going to go make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And that's just not the case. So I want to live in that conversation really quick about the work that it takes to put the things in place that you need to put in place. Like you said, a lot of times it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and adjusting. Let's talk about that journey a little bit for you as you were building, because you went from I was the assistant to 300 employees really quick. But what did the build look like?
Yeah, the build was difficult. There was a lot of measuring and reassessing. And I'm so fortunate that I had people around me. I didn't really have mentors that taught me something. I picked things off of certain people, try to work it out. Did it help me? Did it not? Debunk it, get it out of there. Is it getting me here? Nope. They got to move that out. And I think that's one of the best advice that I've ever got from someone is like, you don't need a mentor to teach you one. It's not one person. A mentor could be a lot of things. Could be somebody you watched on YouTube. It could be somebody you're following. That's what I love about podcasting. So that growth piece and where that came from is me sitting down and saying, okay, how can I increase the overall experience of the customers, clients, buyers that I'm working with in that company? And if I increase their experience, how can I bridge the gap between sales to the marketing to operations to fulfillment and actually have them succeed? So in order for you to have them that separation gap of really succeeding within a program, you need to teach them something extra that the company's not going to teach them. So when I was enrolling students for those types of programs, it feels like years ago, lifetimes ago, when I was selling those types of programs, and what really took me from average results to outstanding results was me over doing it, I guess you would say, and actually really teaching them what it really takes to be successful and over delivering. So they were like, well, I don't do these calls, and I don't do these calls. You're doing extra. You're doing this. You're doing this. I'm like, I've never sold a product and a service or good to anyone that I knew for sure that wasn't going to really benefit from that. That's a moral obligation. That's where everything I teach is the ethical side of sales. A lot of people, when they go into sales, they're looking to make a buck. Well, those people that are looking to make a buck, they're always working for someone else, if you pay attention. And the people that I was enrolling students for and I was selling for those companies, I was, a 1099 or whatever it was before I started setting up contracts, companies. They're still working for these companies. Do you know what I mean? They're still working for them because they weren't doing the extra piece and raising the bar. So you have to ask yourself, how can you increase the overall experience of whoever you're working with? Then start bridging that gap. Okay. How can I monetize it? How can I automate it? How can I streamline it to the point to where my assistants will know, my team will know, my team leads, my salespeople underneath me? How can I train what I do on that level? So when I start bridging those gaps, goes into finance, funding, whatever, people underneath me, I'm teaching them how to support me on actually helping them, not them helping the student. No, you go through me. Right? So if you latch on to my purpose, because my purpose is sometimes stronger than most people, because I know exactly what I want. It's like, did you set a goal to become a millionaire? No, not really. It just happened.
Yeah.
Right? Woke up one day, bam, there was a number. I'm like, my financial advisor would be like, yo, you just became a millionaire. And I'm like, really? Okay, let's go after it again. So that was a huge feeling. I remember calling my parents, bro, and was like, your son is now a millionaire. I was like, where's my money? So it's not about that, because that was never my goal. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My goal was to do something better than most people weren't ready and willing, I guess you would say, to put forth the extra effort. And I've always been the kind of person to give 110%. My mom tells a great story. When I was a kid, when I very first learned how to walk, I ran everywhere. My foot hit the ground in the morning. I was gone. So I've always had that crazy work ethic from people that I learned from. But raising the bar and over-delivering, and how you can do more and serve more, that's where you see the real people out there that are really going to make an impact.
Yeah. So why the shift in what you're doing now and becoming, face forward on social media and podcasting and all these things? What was it about the shift? Because you could have just continued to go down that path, make millions of dollars and be super successful. Now you shift into this world of being a thought leader and really pushing a narrative to help lift up the world. What was that shift for? And how long did you want to do it before you actually made the shift?
Good question. It just happened. I've been asked for years to jump on podcasts and, come in and guest speak. And I was like, I don't got time for that. What is podcasting anyway? I do listen to podcasts. I like podcasts. So it's a good way to consume information but a lot of podcasts, as you know now, they're selling their own stuff and you have to listen to all the commercials and all that stuff. But anyways, I was always asked to do those things. And I was like, I'm too busy making money. I'm too busy growing my businesses. I'm too busy doing my thing. Then when I stepped down from my CEO role and moved into a chairman role and hired an executive staff in one education corporation that I built at Accreditations. Once I built that, I kind of made a decision. Either I keep going on this path and keep building businesses and investing, in which I was making good money. And I'm a very blessed individual. I'm just so fortunate. But I was like, either I keep going on this path where I really throw my hat in a ring and test my skills on everyone out there that's saying that they're shit. So, because the people that I was meeting, I was like, I don't really think you got it. So, and it wasn't about the, skills and whatnot. It's just a way that I would deliver something and me teaching the right way of doing the sales.
Sure.
And it's not about just sales, because that transition from being a sales leader, sales entrepreneur into a business, then going from there and building corporations, that's a hell of a jump. Because everybody wants to be a CEO until you're a CEO and you're like, holy shit, I'm in charge. No one's above me, right? Everyone's there until all the bills show up, right? So, and then you have to scale, and then you have to do this. And you have to look for ways for, doing networks and sponsorships, and it's ugly. So I wanted to get out of there because I didn't want to be a CEO for life. I wanted to be something bigger. I wanted to inspire and elevate others. Something I learned from Dave Meltzer, what he said is elevate others to elevate yourself. And the only way for me to do that is I need to get myself out there. And that was the podcast launch. So
Right.
me launching a podcast, I did it with myself and Wes Bay's co-host for the show. If you're not following that guy, make sure you're doing it. This guy is amazing. He's been around me for about 5 years now. We've been taking on that type of world, and we both made our launch out into, I guess you would say, the public form of the social media space now, as in thought leaders and whatnot. But we made that shift. It was him there trying to get the information out of my head, because anybody can go on a podcast and talk about things. Well, I'm not going to get it all the way out. And he had a really good way of eloquently explaining what I'm talking about to the listeners, and that really helped. Like, it went from my mom and dad to listen to 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 30,000 people. And it's like the last person we had, Bogart, we talked about, he got over like 120 something thousand downloads within like 10 days. Nuts.
Wow.
I don't even know why. I don't know who these people are listening to me, listening to people, but I'm very blessed and thankful for all the people that do tune in for the show. And me kind of going on other shows, meeting other people. Of course, it just happens. And I'm just loving it, man. It's all I want to do. It's just like, I love going on shows. I love talking to people, reaching people on a different type of level, because now that you put in that time, and someone asked me this question a while back, what does it take? Well, turn your camera off, go study for the next 10 years, find your voice, find your way, and then turn your camera back on and keep killing it. But just don't, you can keep your camera on, just don't launch your crap.
Yeah.
Right? Because I hate surface level people, man. I hate it. It drives me insane when they're only surface level.
No, and I agree. And I say all the time, like, people are like, well, how'd you get into podcast coaching and production? I go, well, I went out and I started a podcast that did well. And then the company followed, because people said, hey, I need your information. And then people were like, well, how did you start coaching people in their business? I go, well, I went and I built a business. And then people came to me and said, hey, how'd you build a business? And then that started that as well. Like, I think when you get to a point of becoming a speaker, a thought leader, a whatever you want to call it, like, it needs to be the response to the life that you created for yourself, not the other way around. Like, people are trying so hard these days to put, like you said, put up the camera, put up the microphone, and just start talking about BS they read in somebody else's book. And that's just not inspiring. Like, and then you find out they live in their parents' basement. You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, right. Well, they'll rent a house or they'll rent a car and they'll sit on one. And I mean, go online right now and just type in like what a hashtag entrepreneurship. You can see beautiful women, beautiful men, popping champagne, wearing Rolexes, living a certain lifestyle. Entrepreneurship is not a lifestyle. It's a life. In order for you to become a real entrepreneur, you're going to have to fail, and you're going to have to be willing to lose it all and still be able to manifest the life that you want to create. You live and die by those choices and decisions. That taps into your subconscious. A lot of people aren't tapped into that. They self-sabotage themselves. Like, they'll go, I don't know why I can't never make it. I tried everything. Go around every excuse known to man. I've tried everything. Justin, I've tried everything. And other than that one thing, right? That it's actually going to make a change, because they all want it right now. They want to push the button. They want to go to the vending machine and be like, I want $100 million business. Boop, and they expect that shit to happen. Nah, man, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to, because you have to be a lot of layers deep on who you are. Like, I'm talking to you right now, and the reason why we get along so well is because we're on that frequency. People that aren't aligned, when they get on our frequency, they're not able to handle that frequency, and that's why they bounce off, because they're going to get into self-doubt. They're going to get in their own mind, imposter syndrome. I'm not as good as that person. Don't worry about that other person. The other person is irrelevant. They're just another form. There's another string of energy out there in the world. In order for you to get to that level, you're going to have to work on yourself, and that's forcing people to work on themselves. This COVID-19 stuff, it's forced people to work on themselves.
Yeah.
Force people. And that's why you see a lot of suicides. You see a lot of people, alcohol problems, drug problems, all these other things. Because they're not alone in their own thoughts. They're scared.
Yeah.
They're afraid of things, afraid of losing businesses, afraid of losing their loved ones, afraid of losing whatever. It's a scary place we live in right now, but it's scary if you're looking at it in a pessimistic lens. If you're looking at it in an optimistic lens, you're looking at things, or anything in life is possible. That's why I love I've been built for this for 8 years, man. This COVID shit popped off. I got busier. So
I got this.
I got this. Is all in control. You want me? I got you. I'll sign you up. So we'll make this happen.
So you talk about manifesting, and you've said it a couple of times now in this conversation,
Right.
and that's something that comes up all the time on my podcast, and everybody kind of has their own idea of what that means. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
from your standpoint, what does manifestation mean to you, and how does it play a role in your activities to build the dream that you're building now?
That's a good question because I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in to an extent. I don't sit at my house and go, and don't get it wrong. Like with those that maybe some of the listeners are going to get turned off by what I'm about to say, but it is what it is. I'm 100% authentic. To sit at home and go, and try to meditate. And if that works for you, man, great. It just doesn't work for me. It never does. It never has. I have one of these brains where I just can't shut off. Like my brain's going to go ape shit if I sit alone for a minute. Well, it first started off 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. Now it's went from that to an hour to 2 hours of being alone in my own thoughts. In order for you to be alone in your own thoughts, you need to start identifying certain patterns of behavior. And that comes from your thoughts, right? And because you can't direct your thoughts into a positive outlet unless you're always positive. You have to realign it, right? And go back into the root of cause of actually a real problem. So a lot of people, when we're born into our true essence of our true selves. And what tends to happen is, depending on where we're from, where we're born, who the people around us, we're projected all this other stuff on top of us. And that's all the layers that we have to overcome. And that's what I mean by manifesting. I had to go back in and realizing there's certain things that happen in my life. They're there for a purpose and a reason. But I had to make the right decision and choice. But what decisions and choices can I make differently to realign that and then drop a different anchor to that emotion and not feel a certain way? Because people get caught up in their own damn emotions. And this helps with me. And I guess it was my growth of me. Like when people say, where'd you learn to do sales? I didn't learn to do sales. I learned how people think and people communicate. And what they really mean behind it. Dr. Eric Byrne wrote an amazing book years ago, Games People Play. It's one of the first books I read in sales. Has nothing to do with sales, but people play games all day long. But once you understand how people think and operate, you can start picking up on their, I guess, mishaps or miscommunication and breakdowns, and looking at how they make decisions and choices and leads to their habits and habitual habits that are ruining their lives and self-sabotage. Once you figure all this out in the psychology and the biology behind sales, it's not about sales. It's about human behavior. And that's where the win-win effect comes from, is that when I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm not listening for what you're saying to me. I'm listening for what you're not saying to me and why you're not saying it to me. And then I'll start picking up on these behind. Like, all I'm going to do is observe. When I go into companies, I'm going to observe. I'm just going to write down things. I'm going to sit back and ask myself, then go through my reports, then I come up with my presentation, then I come out with my audit. Hey, here's what I see. Here's what I can do. Here's the price. Why so much? Because I'm that expensive. You know what I mean? So this is why. Here's my results. Here's why. So when you're doing all this, it all takes you go back into your true essence of yourself, and then start shedding all the layers to get to that true essence. And that inner peace, I'm at peace, man. And that manifesting peace comes from me putting things out in the world that I'm trying to accomplish. But I'm not trying to accomplish those things. That's building blocks to get me to the whatever outcome it is.
Right.
I have no idea whatever that's going to be, because the outcome always changes for me. New possibilities. I write down on my task, my targets, and everything I need to accomplish the night before. And first thing I get up in the morning, I'm realigning, and then I come back in my office. I'm like, I don't know why the freak I wrote down that target. That's not going to help me get to that outcome, because it always changes. So the manifesting a life and creating the life that you want, it all comes from here. And once you're aligned and you're trying to put out the right things on what's important to you, that's where you see a lot of people when they become millionaires, they kill themselves. And because they don't know how to deal with it. Right. That tells me that you haven't worked on yourself. That's in order for you to get to the next level, because the universe or God, whatever you believe in, is going to punch you in the face and punch you in the gut right before you're about to accomplish the overall task. That's just to make sure you're ready for it. Mm-hmm. And there's those who actually have the heart to not even dust themselves off, to get up and keep pushing. Because you're not going to beat me unless I beat myself. I'm sure that's a conversation we had before.
Yeah, and I love that too, and it's so true. Like, I can't tell you how many times in my life I'm about to hit that next level, and you get knocked down, and you're like, shit, What do I do next?
Right.
Do I give up? Do I tap out? What do I do? And then as you push through, you realize, oh wait, it's right on the other side of adversity.
Like you were there the whole time, you sneaky little bastard. Right?
It's right there, dude. And well, it's funny. You were talking about something earlier about how like I give them my price and they go, why is it so much? And go, because it's me, right? And so one thing that I love and I say all the time, I learned it back when I was 19 years old in a job where I was in sales. This is gold, by the way. If you're driving down the road right now, pull over, grab a pen and a piece of paper. It's the greatest line in sales of all time. And I'd rather explain to you my price now than apologize for poor results later.
Right.
It became like this.
Point.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like deliver your value and understand your worth. Like, and then at the end of the day, you're going to win. And by the way, that's everything in life. That's not just business. I have a lot of
state your intention. Always state your intention.
That's it.
If you don't state your intention, then what are you having a conversation about? We going to be a back-end seller, backdoor seller? I've been around companies that hand me 4 or 5 different scripts. I don't really believe in scripts. I believe in bullet points. I believe in outlines. I believe in compliance, aligning that. Spend a lot of time with general counsel. So I know the ethical way of making sure you're touching on all the points. Not saying that's not involved in sales. Of course it is. You need to have these bullet points to make sure you're compliant. It's not what you say, it's how you say things, right? Mm-hmm. And even with your tonality on certain touch points. But when you get someone to hand you 5 different scripts, or they're confused about what they sell and the products or what their company is about, their core values, their mission statement, if you don't have a secretary or your first line of defense, that's what I call them, like people that answer the phone, first line of defense. If they don't know your mission statement and don't even know the name of the company and what it's about and why they're trying to accomplish it, and that's a complete reflection of the CEO. On who you are.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, well, I don't get on the phone. I don't know this stuff. I don't like, what are you there? Why are you there? You are ruining your company. Like you're failing your buyers. You're failing your company. You were failing them. And you're yelling at the staff, telling them why they're not hitting those certain levels because you're not providing them with the information they're desperately going to need to combat the problems.
Yeah.
It's complete reflection on what they're not doing. So it's like I come from a world in prior military, and I come from an amazing opportunity to learn from like true leaders, because when you make a poor decision, a poor choice, people lose their lives, right? Mm-hmm. So when you learn from people like this, you got to own everything. That's what entrepreneurship is. You got to own it. These are the numbers. Own it. It's your fault. It's your job. It's like my role as a CEO, in which, moving in different areas and different roles, right? But my role as a CEO is to put every single person in my company in a position to win. And if I don't do that, I'm doing them a disservice. And I'm not going to see a huge change, within 6 weeks, but overall that's going to be a compound effect, and it could ruin my business.
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself those tough questions.
Yeah, it's true, man. And so many people don't keep themselves in check or put themselves on the line. And I love that you said that. So what I also love with everything that you've done in your life, you've always built some sort of success, right? In entrepreneurship, now in the podcast, now in the thought leader space. And I'm only saying thought leader because I can't think of any other word.
I don't even know what to really call myself. People say, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I change lives. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I don't know. I love that. So my question for you is, and this is something I ask everybody, but what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Am I happy? First, everyone knows that they're happy when they very first wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Everyone does. If they're happy or unhappy, where they couldn't improve. The thing about humans is that we're always going to focus on the things that we do not have. Being grateful. So being happy comes from me tapping into a sense of being grateful for everything. If you say thank you tonight before you go to bed, and say thank you in the morning before, right when you wake up, and say just thank you, that changes your whole outlook and the whole conversation. The second thing on being successful is, am I doing the things that actually inspire myself? Am I meeting people that inspire me? Like sometimes my students, sometimes people that I come in contact with, clients that I've worked with over the past, will send me nice messages, nice gifts, or whatever it might be. I don't know. It's about the effect that I have on others. If I'm in line with that and I'm doing that, great. The third thing I would probably have to say, and I love that you asked this question because it's not just surface level, it forces you to go to the third one. Would I be doing this in the next 5 years? If I'm not asking myself, would I be doing this in the next 5 years, and it doesn't align, then I need to ask myself really difficult questions because the other two are off. Because you need to always be growing, right? Always just at 1%. So when people say, what's your 5-year goals, 10-year goals? I don't know. But if I had to go in and answer the question, it would tap into those three things. And what I do each and every day is I hold myself accountable. Accountability is everything, man. Everything. There's been times in my life in the last 9 months has been very challenging for myself in my personal life, but I had to go back and realign certain things within myself because in order for me to get to that next layer or next level, I needed to shed that layer. And it forced me to not be bought into the identity of being successful. Because that's one thing that I talked about with Bogart. It was that success is just a warm place for people to hide that have problems or unresolved issues.
Yeah.
It's just a warm place. Chris is good. He's a multimillionaire. Justin's good. He's good. Everyone's good. But that's just surface level. What I'm putting out. That's the identity. But I was really struggling in my personal life. Like, I can do what I do for a living and teach what I do for a living and teaching the emotional intelligence and teaching all the other stuff that I learned over the years on a tactical side, but I couldn't do it in my personal life because I was missing something. I need to go back in, and I was refusing and putting it off on not doing it. So that's where that accountability piece every day for myself is important because, I mean, the goal is never going to change outcome, overall. Because it's all about those targets and goal, like those small little daily tasks. If I'm not hitting those, it changes the game. That's how aligned I am. That's how much effort that I put in on me making sure that I'm going to manifest a life of my dreams. Because a life of my dreams has nothing to do with money. Nothing. Just a byproduct, man. It's a powerful tool, man. But it takes money and it takes that tool to live that life.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question the way that that was off the fly and I loved it, but that was a great question.
It was great.
Thank you.
It was great, man. And honestly, like, you're speaking my language, everything. Like, if somebody was like, people ask me all the time, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I go, I don't know, more what I have now. Like, because I'm focused on that growth. Alive, happy, grateful, all these things. And honestly, when you break it down, that is all that matters. And I actually just put a post on social media the other day and I said, look, you can chase $1 million. That could be your goal, and goals are important. But once you reach that million, you go, okay, I need 10 million. There's no satisfaction.
Well, look at inflation.
In that goal.
Look at inflation. $1 million not the same thing it was 10 years ago.
No, you're not surviving off of $1 million anymore. Maybe $1 million a year, but not in your lifestyle.
Yeah, of course. But if you become a millionaire, that shit isn't going to last you a long time if you don't fix your relationship with money and how you structure, what you buy and what you purchase. You can have, like, people talk about debt. Well, it's okay to have debt as long as it's not consumer debt.
Right.
Like right now, like if you told me, hey, Chris, I would love for you to get yourself involved in XYZ company. And so then I'm going to ask myself some really different questions. Like, what is the barriers of entry? Okay. What is the impact? What are you trying to accomplish? Are the core values aligned with everybody in the company? And ask all these questions, right? Then I'll go, okay, well, I need X amount of capital. Well, I'm not going to go into my money. I'm going to go into all the things that I'm getting passive income with and seeing where I can trim 10K here, 20K here, 40K here, and coming up with the right capital to invest those profit into that company. I'm not going to invest my money. This is how the rich stay rich.
Yeah.
And the poor stay poor because they think because you make $10,000 and you think that shit's profit. That shit ain't profit. Like, you got to ask yourself tough questions. When you learn the finance game, man, I'm telling you, the best entrepreneurs out there today come from sales and finance. Sales and finance, because I understand what it takes to make a buck and how to invest it.
Yeah.
That simple.
It's true, man. So I have a feeling you're going to be on the show again in the future. And I wrap up.
I love it, man. Yeah.
I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? What's the podcast? What's all that good information? Right.
Best way to get me, man, is just yell out the window, Chris Ross. I'm pretty sure I answered. Like at some point my team will. If you're probably noticing on my IG, I did win the trademark thing where it's just Chris Ross. I'm at This Is Chris Ross on all the other ones. I'm on every one. But the easiest way to get me is the Win-Win Effect. You definitely follow. I mean, we're getting amazing amount of feedback and streams and downloads and so many different. Man, I'm just so blessed, man. If you'd have asked me a year ago when the podcast launched, if this would have been it, like what happened, like holy crap. So I'm just so grateful and so blessed. But the Win-Win Effect, it's myself, Wes Bays, my co-host, and we go through and interview people like yourself, all the different people that are looking into, just a win-win effect. It's all about winning. That's what it's about. Are you winning your day? You leave sometimes a lot of trainings. I'm like, let's go win our day. I'm not saying I'm going to go win my day and go fuck yourself. I'm saying let's go win our day. Let's go win our day. Yeah. Like that's a whole thing about leadership that a lot of people don't pay attention to, even the small language that they actually use and dropping in conversations. That's how aligned you have to be. But the easiest way to get me is there, chrisrossofficial.com. But other than that, man, just connect with me on IG. It's probably the easiest way. And my executive assistant, Carolyn, she's been with me for about 5 years now, man. And when you get great people around you, you treat them as good as where they don't leave you, but they could leave you and make a lot of money, right? So that's always a good thing.
I love it, man. I love it. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this one question. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
The setbacks. The biggest driving forces in life don't ever come from the best memories. So if I had to pick one, it would have been when my sister passed away when I was 16, about turned 16 years old. It's a pivotal moment in my life. My sister was born handicapped. We could talk about that on different shows and whatnot. And that's forced me to go back into my true self, my true essence of myself, because that was the only time. That's where I lost the vulnerability piece. I wasn't vulnerable anymore. Now I had a wall. So when I lost her, when I changed that I learned so much from that experience and watching her breathe through tubes and overcoming adversity and only supposed to make it until she was 4 and then make it all the way to she's 18 years old. She was there to teach me a lesson and teach the people around her serving as a lesson, to be grateful for all the small shit in life that you take a granted for, like breathing, talking, walking, seeing, these smallest things. So if I had to pick one, it would be that moment. But there's been a lot of other moments in my life where it's forced me, and it's a good, huge gut check, where I was forcing me to make a shift if I wanted to manifest and create the life that I wanted.
I love it, man. Chris, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom. And like I said, I feel like you're going to be back on in the future, but I'm excited to see where this friendship goes. I'm excited to be on your podcast. So guys, make sure you check out the Win-Win Effect. Incredible show, incredible guests. If you heard, we've had a couple of the same guests, and he's gone deeper and he's gone in a different direction. So make sure you guys check it out. Chris, again, thank you so much, man.
You're welcome. And anything I could do from you, I'm open book, man. So definitely I look for every person I have come on the show or go on other shows. I want everyone to view me as a lifelong friendship, not just me coming on your show and in and out. Like how can I serve you? How can we support each other? So I'm very blessed, and I'm so fortunate that we had a chance to, have a couple conversations, get on this show and serve your audience, and you coming on ours. And I look forward to every encounter.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.